There's some doubt about just how many people have or haven't had coronavirus, which should strike a little bit of fear into us, because I've been going into buildings the last couple of days and people have ramped up the testing of your temperature and all these sorts of things. The hand washing thing is an absolute. I found it amazing that the Prime Minister has actually said we need social distancing on escalators. One of my pet hates. People think it's a ride. They hop on it and they just sort of don't move. They're meant to make you move faster. I mean, there's so much of this sort of stuff that's in our national conversation. Meanwhile, the government was criticised a week ago about not decommissioning funding to the World Health Organisation. But I see this week, James McGrath, where the master plans come together. I didn't think we could bail out, even though philosophically I didn't think we should be part of it, the World Health Organisation. We've bought some ownership of the issue. We've said you need to go in and be of some use, investigate this sort of rubbish that's been going on in places like Wuhan.
Yeah, I think I've got a pretty different view to my Prime Minister on this, and it might be career limiting, but I'm not a big fan of the WHO, and I'm unsure whether I'd really want to... Actually, when I say I'm unsure, I don't want them getting more powers, because you look who heads up the WHO, it's a former health minister from Ethiopia, which is such a shining example of democracy, freedom and looking after its people. It's still run by effectively a Marxist dictatorship. And you want to give that joint more power and to come into countries, because they won't be going into Ethiopia and they won't be going into Cuba. What they'll do is they'll be doing a bunch of sticky beaks and worrying about liberal democracies like Australia. So, no, not a fan of that.
Me neither.
So you reckon they'll probably be going around counting all the light bulbs in all the hospitals in, say, St Vincent's, so they'll be counting the number of light bulbs per patient, Bronwyn?
Look, I think the WHO has been totally discredited. Its current Director General is just a puppet of Communist China and the Communist China regime. And the reasons are obvious. He is a Marxist himself, a Marxist-Leninist. Plus, China is building a railway in Ethiopia. They've been bought. And that means the fish always rots from the head, if you recall. And I don't think you can trust it one bit. If you're going to look at somebody, I would rather be looking at the G20 than rather looking at the United Nations, because they have the same sorts of problems. There are so many agencies of the United Nations that you really cannot trust, and the human rights one is just for starters. But if we're serious about finding out just what went on in Wuhan, I think we've got to start with the fact that the Communist Party of China deliberately sent infected people on planes into the rest of the world. It curtailed domestic flights to stop it going into its centres like Shanghai and Beijing, but it sent it out into the rest of the world. It then has followed up with propaganda trying to say it is not their fault, it was the United States that caused this. And then they've got a program in place where they're saying, look at us, the Good Samaritans, we're sending out equipment now to the rest of the world to cope with the disease that they caused. But if you look at a really bad part of it, and you can be as cynical as you like, but Spain bought 400,000 masks from China, from the Communist Chinese, and they are all faulty. Then they were supplied to people in hospitals and looking after the sick. So they've been exposed further by relying on a product that came out of China, allegedly to help, but has just made the problem worse. Now, at the same time as all this is going on, you've got the Communist Party of China's Navy being active in the Pacific, around the islands that are owned and controlled by Japan and other areas near the Philippines. There is nothing passive about what is going on. And if we think that it's all just nice and they just want nice peace, no, because socialism always fails. And when it fails, they become aggressive. And it doesn't matter whether it was Germany's National Socialists or Russia's Stalinist regimes, they all become aggressive once it fails and they can't feed their people. And that's exactly what's happening in China.
Well, Bronwyn,